once again, we have these 5 forces here. When you do a 5 forces analysis, one of the greatest challenges here is to think through the totality of the pros and cons you see within the industry. It would be rare to find an industry where all the forces are working either positively for the industry or working against the industry. And so the real art of a 5 forces analysis is trying to balance between those various types of pressures that you find and making arguments at the end of the day about which ones you think are more salient and why. Now, there are many critiques of the 5 forces analysis. One of them is simply that the 5 forces aren't enough. There are other factors that we need to consider, and I think that's definitely the case. This is definitely a necessary but not sufficient tool when doing a strategic analysis. 2 simple ones I'd like to highlight here. One is the role of complements. Complements are a little bit different than supply. These are things like software to a hardware manufacturer here. Though it's not a direct supplier, the success of the software company helps drive the success of the hardware company. So who has bargaining power in terms of complements? Sometimes they work together, and sometimes, of course, they might work at odds with one another. So thinking through the role of complements might be an additional thing you want to think through in terms of industry structure. The second one you want to think about is the role of institutions. Now, by institutions, we mean those who basically make the rules of the game here, and the most obvious candidate would be government, in terms of government policy and the like. I've mentioned a few times about things like antitrust policy in the U.S. Antitrust policy is there to prevent the inappropriate use of market power within a marketplace here, using a monopoly to your advantage. And so it's good to know how institutions can shape the competitive context within an industry, how it can shape the degree to which some of these things about rivalry and tacit coordination and the like are possible or not. So let me end with the following lessons. First off, a key task to any strategic analysis is to identify and address the competitive forces that limit economic rents. 5 forces analysis is one of the most valuable tools in your strategist toolkit. It helps you understand, again, whether an industry is attractive or not, and to help you understand perhaps where there are opportunities to create barriers to competition that allow firms to avoid this fundamental principle problem that we've discussed of going down to the competitive, perfectly competitive market where no firm makes economic rents. So some things to think about broadly. Entry. We would like less entry. That makes an industry more attractive. And it's less likely when incumbent firms have a competitive advantage that makes it hard for potential entrants to compete, and that they can incredibly retaliate against new entrants in this industry. Second thing, substitutes. Substitutes are less likely when switching costs are high, making it difficult to switch away from existing products. And this cross-price elasticity is low. Once again, you really demand one product class versus another. Third thing, buyer and supplier power depend on relative concentration, this power differential here in terms of numbers and scarcity. The viability of alternatives, to what degree do the buyers or suppliers have the ability to play off one another, and information availability again. And this gets to our ideas of price discrimination alike. The more informed a buyer is, the more power they have in a relationship, and that applies both to a buyer, to a focal firm and industry, and from that focal firm and industry to the suppliers as well. And then finally, rivalry amongst existing competitors is more intense when the incentives to fight are large and tacit coordination is difficult. And in particular, the simplest thing to think about is how many firms are within the industry. If there's a lot of firms within the industry, rivalry will be more intense. Fewer firms in the industry, all things being equal, rivalry will be less intense. The industry will be more favorable. So let me end there. Thank you for taking the time to go through this lecture today, and thank you very much.